Unmasked, unedited, unwatchable, with double the rants and maybe half the excitement. Welcome, my stars of Orion. I'm Orion Kelly. Thank you so much for watching. I'm all about providing validation and support for autistic people and their loved ones. And I want to talk about burnout and something I kind of been referring to as seasonal depression. And nothing depresses me more than this content creator. Jenn from Neurodivergent, that's not true. That's clearly a joke. But Jenn, you know what? There's no special interest here. You know what, Jenn? You can talk now. You are now the first person I've ever asked to join me on an unmasked, unedited, unwatchable video where I pretty much just unleash and unmask in all my glory. So thank you for doing that.
You might be sorry you did that. I feel like the only unwatchable part of this podcast now is going to be that you invited me.
Well, I'm glad I invited you. I'm glad you're here. And because you know what? You and I have had many conversations about burnout. But I just want to be clear for people watching. There's no questions here. This isn't an interview. This isn't like a collaboration video. It's an unmasked, unedited. So it's completely going off on tangents, rants and all that kind of stuff. But I want to be clear, just for people starting at the start, autistic burnout is what we're talking about. So like standard burnout, which I'm not too sure how you define that. I don't know. But anyway, we're talking about autistic burnout, and something that I've talked to Jenn many times about privately around the end of the year is something that I'm now kind of coming to understand as, I don't know, I'm potentially calling it seasonal depression, but I know that I hope I'm not offending people that have clinical depression. I don't have that, but we talk about this a lot. And I'm sure you pointed it out, but I remember it too. There were crap loads of comments. I did like a live stream, and I think it was called "I'm Not Okay" or something. And there were crap loads of comments that said, you know what, I feel exactly the same around the end of the year, around like this, the end of the year and the start of the year. And I just felt like there were a lot of comments that almost said, wow, this is me. Like I feel burnt out or like seasonally depressed at the end of the year, as in comments from the community. I don't know. Do you remember any of that when I was talking about that with you in that live stream I did with, where I'm not okay and blah, blah, blah?
Mm-hmm. And honestly, I've talked to, several content creators.
Jenn from Neurodivergent, that's not true. That's clearly a joke. But Jenn, you know what? There's no special interest here. You know what, Jenn? You can talk now. You are now the first person I've ever asked to join me on an unmasked, unedited, unwatchable video where I pretty much just unleash and unmask in all my glory. So thank you for doing that.
You might be sorry you did that. I feel like the only unwatchable part of this podcast now is going to be that you invited me.
Well, I'm glad I invited you. I'm glad you're here. And because you know what? You and I have had many conversations about burnout. But I just want to be clear for people watching. There's no questions here. This isn't an interview. This isn't like a collaboration video. It's an unmasked, unedited. So it's completely going off on tangents, rants and all that kind of stuff. But I want to be clear, just for people starting at the start, autistic burnout is what we're talking about. So like standard burnout, which I'm not too sure how you define that. I don't know. But anyway, we're talking about autistic burnout, and something that I've talked to Jenn many times about privately around the end of the year is something that I'm now kind of coming to understand as, I don't know, I'm potentially calling it seasonal depression, but I know that I hope I'm not offending people that have clinical depression. I don't have that, but we talk about this a lot. And I'm sure you pointed it out, but I remember it too. There were crap loads of comments. I did like a live stream, and I think it was called "I'm Not Okay" or something. And there were crap loads of comments that said, you know what, I feel exactly the same around the end of the year, around like this, the end of the year and the start of the year. And I just felt like there were a lot of comments that almost said, wow, this is me. Like I feel burnt out or like seasonally depressed at the end of the year, as in comments from the community. I don't know. Do you remember any of that when I was talking about that with you in that live stream I did with, where I'm not okay and blah, blah, blah?
Mm-hmm. And honestly, I've talked to, several content creators about this, and it's interesting because we're talking about this later after the end of the year is already over. But it's weird how it kind of takes a processing minute for it to really sink in that it's cyclical. And I have noticed that, like, you and I especially, we tend to hit burnout at the same time. And yeah, two autistic people ranting. I think seasonal depression is a good thing to call it, right? But it's very much like depression. For me, I'm just gonna say, like, at the end of the year, I'm so out of routine, as we all are. And for me, living in America, we have Thanksgiving on top of Christmas. And so I'm having to deal with, Thanksgiving, putting that on for family, cooking, all of the gatherings that you feel obligated to attend to, twice the fun for me. And you're totally out of routine. And so this is understandable why I hit burnout during this time. But the funny thing I find is that you can hit burnout with or without a reason. And so I just feel like I kind of want to, like, rant about, like, and get vulnerable about what it feels like for me towards the end of the year, but also how it feels for me in general, because it doesn't just happen at the end of the year. It's about every 3 months or so for me, I would venture to say. But even at these social gatherings, there's alcohol. And alcohol is one of the, unfortunately, I'll admit, it's one of the substances that I use to get through social functions. And I know that I'm not the only autistic that struggles with that. And one of my social discomforts that I have is, like, wanting to have something to do. So I'll eat, during these social functions. And so it's all the unhealthy food, of course, like everybody's got the snacks and the treats and everything else. And, so rather than just like, no, I'm not going to have that because I'm so uncomfortable in the social situation, I'm like stuffing my face. And, the past few years, we've had my mother-in-law here, and I love her to death. If there was anybody who did not drain my energy, she's definitely one of them. She's a really nice lady. But I don't care how nice you are or how well we get along, or how little you drain my energy. You're still in my space, and I'm still out of routine because you're here. Coming downstairs to get my coffee in the morning, I'm having to have somebody else in my space. So it has nothing to do with her and everything to do with me. And so during these times when I should be on and I should be having fun and I should be enjoying the time, I find that, I am struggling so badly, which feels even worse when you feel like it's supposed to be this joyous time of year. It feels even worse, but like I can't cook some days. I can't do basic functions. Some people, it mimics depression. So going back to what you were saying earlier about it seeming like seasonal depression, I don't know if I want to say that burnout rhymes with depression or if depression is a part of it, because to me, depression feels like a part of it. Some people don't eat during these times when they're depressed. I overeat and all the unhealthy stuff too. I can't get out of bed. I have no motivation to work, which is harder when you work from home. In some ways, because I don't have a place that I can just show up to and go through the motions. Being my own boss, I have to almost feel motivated to get projects done or they don't get done, and I have increased sensitivity during these times. And really, it just feels so bad sometimes that, and I'll try to keep this YouTube friendly, that I almost, you're almost wishing for a light at the end of the tunnel. Like, that's how bad it gets. And of course, that's nothing to worry about for anybody that knows me, or for those of you who don't know me. I have a kid, I've got a husband, but like, to think about it, to like feel that way, to feel that bad, and to feel all the guilt of not being able to be productive and everything else. Burnout sucks. It sucks.
I think the big thing too that you mentioned is, well, first, there's so many things, but one of the things was you talked about Thanksgiving, Christmas, and it's like basically you have 2 Christmases, but then I thought what's worse about that is we only have Christmas, not Thanksgiving, but we have at least 2 or 3 Christmases because you've got like separate catch-ups with separate family members and different people. So it like triples the amount of catch-ups you have, and I totally understand all the triggers there. And also because, so for me, I'm different to you. For me, Christmas is the summer break, right? Your summer break is the middle of the year, right? So we have Christmas and the summer break at once. Maybe that's better to get over and done with. But anyway, the point I'm saying is, you used an example of like your mother-in-law, but I would say, and it's not even her, like having your husband or your son, or for me, my wife or my kids in my space when they usually at work or at school, that's as bad. It seems ridiculous because they live here, like it's their house. But the idea of having 2 months or 3 months where your partner and your kids are at home, for me, it's not even like, you don't even have to extend it out to other family members. It's just as triggering for that because there's no escape, there's nowhere to go, and also too, you really want to be present and enjoy the time with them, but it is really triggering and stressful, and that's probably another reason why that leads to burnout. Because if we talk about the starting point of burnout, I mean, the starting point of burnout in really simple terms is, so it's when you're dysregulated, you'll melt down or you'll shut down. You might be filled with rage. There's all different things, right? But dysregulation leads to meltdown and shutdown. These types of things. And what happens is, if you continue to be in a world that dysregulates you, or do things that are dysregulating while you are in those periods of shutdown and meltdown and the different types of things, then eventually you're going to lead to burnout. Burnout doesn't just happen. So what it means is you have put yourself through long periods of dysregulation, even though it's pushed you into meltdown and shutdown and these types of things. And instead of giving yourself enough time or grace to feel regulated again, you've kind of tried to push through. And you've done okay, but then eventually you've reached the point where it's completely snapped off, and there's no longer the best case scenario is meltdown or shutdown. Now you're officially burnt out. You're autistic burnout. And like that is the end manifestation of basically putting your regulation needs last for one reason or another. And a lot of times it's selfish reasons. Like I'll just pump work. And then eventually it's like I haven't made a video for 3 months because I pushed so hard. So, burnout doesn't just happen. But then, as you say, when you get to that period, I really relate to what you're saying, where it's almost like there's a type of autistic burnout depression, like you feel depressed because of the autistic burnout. And it's not rocket science. I mean, if I'm burnt out and I'm triggered by my own family and I don't have the ability to even look at things on my phone to do with work, let alone actually work, write scripts, record videos, edit videos. It's a massive process. Then that's not gonna be good for my mental health because this is all I do. And then you catastrophize and go, well, my partner goes to work and makes money, and I'm in a period now where I can't do what I do for work, so that makes me more useless in the family. And then you do the things like you talked about around this time being Christmas, which is for me like binge eating, overeating, binge eating. For me, I seem to be like a binge eater. Like I'll overeat, but I'll emotionally snap and then I'll just eat massive amounts of something. And that really pisses me off because I literally spend the entire year like virtually counting calories, working out, trying to be healthy. And then I get to December and I'm like, what have you done? You've just undone all this work. Like you've gone from feeling good in September to feeling, fat and wanting to die in December. And then it gets to January, and for me, the kids go back in Feb. So January's is bad because all the parties and stuff are over, but now you've got this period in January. I guess it's kind of like maybe the last month of holidays for you guys in summer. The kids are over it. There's nothing to look forward to. Christmas is finished. New Year's Eve and all that shit, everything's finished. It's like, well, what do we do now, right? And so you've become like a concierge. You're constantly trying to find them things to do. But you've got nothing left. And then you're kind of like stumbling to the end of a marathon by the time they go back to school. And that's the reason why you or I could never have done this video in December or January. Like you talked about it, it would have made more sense to do it when we were feeling it. It's like, are you drunk? Like, well, you could be. You just say, hey. But, seriously, no, legitimately, we couldn't have done this in December or January. In December, right. If I was talking to you privately in December, you might have thought he might never make videos again. We're not going to be doing this in December or January. But like the alcohol thing you talk about, it's funny because growing up as a young guy, like a teenager and a young adult, with Australia having a drinking age of 18, which is different to America, where 18 you can drink. But that's irrelevant. I mean, kids in every country in the world don't abide by the law when it comes to drinking. But I'm just saying, I hadn't drunk anything until I was like 21. And even then, I barely drank anything. I literally didn't touch alcohol for most of my 20s and 30s. And the first time I kind of found something in alcohol like, well, it tastes good if I have the right drink and it feels good, it was probably when you actually have all these extra capacity issues when you're a parent and, and you've got a complicated life. And now I can kind of understand. It's like, a lot of autistic people can become alcoholics, can be addicted or can do damage. Mm-hmm. And I can see why, because in a way, it helps you mask, it helps you blend in. For me, I know that a lot of people used to like giving me drinks because it would make me in their minds like extrovertedly funny, like not just my normal humor, but I'd be funny in a way where it would be their entertainment. So, it gives you something people want. So that's a good thing. But then it isn't a good thing because like you're putting it into your body and all the different effects and all the different things. And then you have to remember, but I've still got kids and a life. So from everything you just said, like, obviously it resonates, but, that's kind of like the thing where people forget that we might not have had these problems 10, 20 years ago, as like diagnosed. But once our capacity, drops below the threshold to meet the daily stresses and demands of life and dysregulation, we're going to be in a lot of trouble. And for me, this is where I'm at. I mean, this is like a recurring issue. I've got to the point now I pretty much think I've got PTSD for the end of the year. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yes. Obviously when you're eating like crap and you're drinking alcohol, that makes your ability to recover even lower. But the interesting thing is that even though I've been diagnosed for so long, there are still some things that just kind of like kick me in the face. And one of those things is that as I was kind of thinking about, my cycles of burnout recently, is that I always feel like there's a cause or reason, and sometimes there is, like we're talking about the end of the year and all of the things that we're dealing with that are out of our control and we're out of our routine, and we're having to socialize with everybody, and we're eating like crap and we're drinking to get through it. Some of us, not all of us, but again, a lot of us. But what I've come to realize is that really there is no escaping it. There's no, I'm going to fix my life and make everything better so that this stops happening because I'm autistic. It's going to keep happening. And I think what makes that, that could sound depressing, but in a way it's kind of a relief to remember that it's not anything that you're doing wrong, or, if you had the stars aligned and all of your ducks in a row, it might put it off for a little while. But I think remembering that will kind of take some of that or at least for me, it kind of takes some of the guilt off of me, that it's like, it's nothing that I could do better. But I feel
you could
like
live in a cave, right? You could live in a cave.
Yeah. Eventually, after maybe a year or so, I might miss people. But I mean,
don't think I would, but yeah, fair enough.
I have no idea. But I mean, it's like a pressure valve. It's like every time you kind of get a few hours to relax during the day, or a few minutes or whatever, it's like you're releasing a little bit of that steam, but you don't completely release all of it. And so eventually it is going to come to a head, and you are going to hit that period of burnout, no matter how much self-care you do, no matter how much grace you give yourself, because life is freaking harder for us. And that sucks sometimes, to just remember that, or to realize that, everything is just so much harder for us. A lot of things that everybody else is able to do so much more easily is like 10 times the effort for us. And then, don't get me wrong, there are some things that we can easily do that others are like, jealous that they can't do things that easily. But when everything is so much more, sensory impactful, and you're beating yourself up because why am I exerting so much more energy than everyone else to do tasks that come more naturally to them, or easier for them? And it's so sometimes what kind of makes it worse for me is that a lot of people are able to say, if they're neurotypical, they also get tired from time to time, but or they might have something that seems similar to burnout, but usually they can pinpoint something. They can say, man, I've had a really heavy extra, workload at work. My kid's been sick and he's been in the hospital for 3 or 4 weeks. And, I'm over here dealing with burnout, and somebody comes and asks me, why are you burned out? And it's like,
Yeah.
I don't
but that's
really...
wording, man. That's bad wording. I would argue they're exhausted. They're experiencing exhaustion. Autistic burnout and exhaustion are two different things. We don't have to. We could be full of energy physically, but feel energy-less mentally because of burnout. Like so that's kind of where I see the difference there. Like I totally agree. There are mums and dads with way worse lives than us that could be in horrific situations, sick kids, war zones, living on the streets, all that kind of stuff. But like I still see it as different. It's different. It's like saying, I've been walking for 10Ks, 10 kilometers, whatever the miles insert here. I'll do it all in Spanish so you can't understand it. But what I'm saying is I've been walking this whole time. I'm exhausted. My legs are sore. And it's like saying, yeah, but you shouldn't be exhausted. You've been with me, but you've been using your arms to move your wheelchair. What do you mean you're exhausted? Your legs haven't done anything. They don't work, right? Yep. We've both done the 10Ks. I've been using my arms. You've been using your legs. They're different things. But for me, it's the guilt and the shame. Like my wife can go, right, I hear you, I see you. This summer, what I'll do is I'll take, if I have to leave without pay, I'll take leave. I won't go to work this summer, and I'll take the kids away and they'll do things, and she'll do that. But it does not change my dysregulation or my burnout or my ridiculously quickly triggered stress response at the moment, because I'm already there. So then I feel guilt and shame, because it's like, what more do you expect them to do? They're doing so much. I'm doing so little, but I still can't bring my stress response down or get out of this rut. Like, it's not like I could record a video while she takes them to the zoo or something. It basically just gives me a small portion of time to regulate. But then I kind of feel like the guilt and shame of saying, you're absolutely right. You sacrifice massive amounts taking the kids away for half a day, but half a day didn't, if I plugged myself in, didn't charge me past 10%, right? Like I'm in my autistic burnout got me in such a deficit that no matter what the world does, it's impossible. It's basically mid-Feb, and I'm probably closer to, are 90 to 100% now. But, in the moment, it doesn't matter what people do. So it just fills you with complete guilt and shame because there's nothing more these people can do. But then you just feel like a useless person because you don't feel like there's anything you can do. And it's impossible to, I feel like it's impossible to explain it to most people, that kind of feeling. And that's why I don't understand how to separate the feeling of going through autistic burnout and feeling depressed seasonally. Because obviously for you have Christmas and Thanksgiving one time of the year and you have the summer holidays another time of the year. Now, you might be a mum that loves summer holidays and hanging out with the family and going on adventures. I mean, you seem to be that kind of adventurous, kind of outdoorsy girl, so especially when you live in a place that's freezing half the year. Where for me, it's at the same time. So it's like you want to go to water parks and theme parks and holidays, but it's like, yeah, mate, but we just had the worst 2 weeks of our life. We basically had a family or a friend get together every second day for 2 weeks. Like, I'm shot. I don't want to go to the beach. Like, I live on the beach. I don't want to go to the beach. What do you mean I want to go to the beach? It's a hot day. Yes, but we've just had back bloody parties. So I think, when it's together, it's like get it over and done with. But in saying that, it's like it ruins one thing ruins the other. Where, like, I don't know how you get through having summer in the middle of the year, because that basically means that, potentially your husband, but certainly your son will be home for large periods of time when you would be thinking in your mind, like, this is my space. This time of day is my space, guys. Not sure why I'm seeing you here this time of day. You don't belong here. I mean, I don't know how you go through it twice a year.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know, man. It's, the other thing I'm thinking of, like, as you were talking, is how long you mentioned, how it's mid-Feb and you're just now beginning to feel back to like 90, 100%. That's the other thing, is that it just takes so long for that freighter to turn around, because it's so heavy, and to feel like you have a good day again or a good few days. Yeah, it's, and the funny thing is that one of the things that, burnout robs me of is like wishing for better days. When you're in those burnout periods, you just want to get through it. And then it takes so long to feel back to normal. So you're kind of like mid. So you're like feeling like crap. And then you're feeling mid as you're trying to like get back to feeling better. And then you start to feel a little bit better. But for those, weeks, months, whatever it is, you're sitting there just wanting to get through it. And then that's how time just kind of like flies by. And you feel like you can't be present too, because you're just, like, I just want to get through this, and nobody wants to like sit with the pain of a yucky day, but at the same time, just wishing for the day to be over with for so many days can be really difficult, and it can rob you of a lot. Like, and again, I'm just, hoping that people out there relate to this. You were saying, and I'm sure they do. And you were saying it's kind of hard to explain this to somebody, not to our community. They get it. I feel like it's hard to explain to a neurotypical, which is kind of what I was, describing earlier, is that there is absolutely a difference between a neurotypical who's going through something and us, who, like you said, we lay the most guilt on ourselves. But and I feel like, because you've got a very supportive partner, I've got a very supportive partner, and we're very lucky for that. I consider myself very blessed for that. He doesn't lay any guilt on me. I lay all of that guilt on myself. But, so maybe it's not coming from the outside world as much. Maybe I'm feeling guilty for it, but it's, in a way, it's like, what did you do? What happened? Or what have you done that has been so stressful? And it's like, I've existed. That's what's been so stressful, because everything is harder for me. All of the senses are louder for me. I have to, exert so much more energy to get things done. And the other day, Jay and I were driving to poker, to go play a game of poker. And in the car, I thanked him, and maybe I'm a little bit too apologetic, but I thanked him for being so like patient and nice to me. And he said, well, I have to, because you're kind of mean to yourself. And I was like, ouch. That's very, very true. I am my own worst critic. I'm really hard on myself, because I've always been a like pull yourself up by the bootstraps kind of girl. And I know the meaning of that saying is actually kind of a joke, because you literally can't pull yourself up by the bootstraps. I get it. But for whatever that phrase is supposed to mean, or however it's been adopted to mean, an internal locus of control, wanting to be productive, wanting to get stuff done, having these periods of burnout where I feel like I just really can't do any of it. And I just feel handicapped. Like you were talking about the, guy in the wheelchair. Yeah, that's exactly what it feels like. And you get upset with yourself. You get frustrated with yourself. You feel all that guilt. So no, half an afternoon isn't enough time to recharge. Although that's extremely sweet and supportive and wonderful. You just have to get through it.
But like you just mentioned, you're kind of almost feeling handicapped. I mean, this is not supposed to be offensive to people, but that's because you are. It's a neurodevelopmental disability. It's a medically diagnosed, recognized disability. You are disabled in life because of being autistic. Your autistic brain disables you in the neurotypical world. So that's just a reality for us. But what I picked up too was something you said. I mean, it's the stupidest thing on the planet for us. We absolutely wish time away. We do. We wish time away, yet get pissed off we're getting older. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. We literally, like, if I wish away the summer, let's say I wish away the summer, which for me is Christmas and New Year, then that means, mate, that means you're going into a year where you're going to be a year older. And for me, all I think about is aging and death. I mean, I don't mean like in a depressing way, but I mean, this is the thing. People always say, you're so down or dark or negative or whatever. And I think, hang on a second, my brain is logical. Let's just strengthen my brain. It's always going to think in logical sense. And a logical sense is I'm getting more into a window now where the chances of cognitive decline and, anything, dementia, Alzheimer's, all these things are just astronomically higher, not only because of an autistic brain, but also because I'm pretty much releasing stress hormones, cortisol and stress hormones into my system on a daily basis because of all the dysregulation I'm going through. Most humans wouldn't release this kind of stuff more than, I don't know, it could be once a month, it could be once a year, who knows? I mean, so my brain's constantly thinking about that, yet I'm still wishing time away. Like a lot of times I'll say phrases like, just got to get through this week. It's like, what do you mean you just got to get through this week? It's a week. You probably have to live it, mate. Like you probably have to enjoy it. I just want to get on this flight and get home. It's like, well, hang on. There's a lot of things to break down there. There's the car ride. There's the check-in. There's the waiting. There's the airport. There's the plane. There's so many things. But for me, when I feel overstressed or completely in that survival instinct, which is what you talked about before without saying it, you're in a survival instinct in those moments from that. I don't see it any other way. I can't work out, no matter how hard I try to be present or be a good dad, right? A good husband or a good this or a good that. My brain is constantly working against me because I guess it's kind of like, well, mate, what do you want from me? Like how much? A lot of times I'll have to say, pick. You pick. Like which one is it? Because I'll ask for two things. Like, can you just relax and be chilled, and so we can the family can have a relaxing flight home. And it's like, well, which one do you want me to be? Like I can't be relaxed and chilled and be here with you guys. So I'll see when I'll go to business and I'll see when we get home. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not going to work. I can't be both. And that leans to the guilt and shame. Although, of course, I would have no guilt and shame flying business class by the family fluent economy away from me. That wouldn't bother me, but I'm sure it would bother them. And that's clearly an issue for them to work through.
Clearly. Yeah, that's literally you read my mind, tying those two things together. Just like I've been, I swear there's even a meme that says this somewhere, but it's like I've been trying to get through this week for like 5,000 weeks now. And it literally, when you do just think about like, frick, I'm getting older and, time's getting shorter. When you're not able to be present, it's like a double whammy. And, and it's really hard to talk to people about it, I feel like, in a sense, because not because of them, not because I don't have people in my life that wouldn't listen, but it's because I go through it so often. It almost feels like, what am I going to talk to my husband about? Because it's like the same thing every 3 months. Like I almost just don't even want to bother him with it. And I keep saying 3 months. That's just, whatever. It's an average, whatever it is. But it's like, he would listen to me, but I don't even have the words to say anymore because it's like, what new do I say about what I'm experiencing right now? It's the same old BS, and even, with some of the awesome autistic friends I have, it's hard to talk about it because it's like, it's just almost a feeling of like, here we go again. It's the same old thing. I haven't fixed this by now. No. So I don't know. Yeah.
The big question for me is, which I ask myself, it's a rhetorical question, is protecting myself from autistic burnout and leading myself into periods of depression, which has no good impact on me or the family, is protecting myself from autistic burnout and protecting myself from leading into depression compatible with being a good husband and father? Because it isn't. That's the hard part. I can't reconcile that. But then I don't know. Like, I mean, if I went back 2 generations and I spoke to kids about their dads, let's say I went back 2 generations, which would be, I guess, the generation of, say, our grandparents, then you would ask the kids, tell us about your dad. And they're like, I don't know. I don't know him. He went to work. He came home. He did his own thing. I never saw him. He didn't parent me. That wasn't rude, by the way. That was just the way it was, right? Like, our grandparents, they were in a generation. So I guess that means they were potentially born in World War I, and then they kind of, maybe went to World War II, and they had baby boomers, blah 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 blah. But the fact of the matter is, sometimes I think, man, I should have been born then, right? I mean, I would have got better jobs on radio and back then in the 50s and 60s. But I mean, seriously, because I can't have that experience, even though that's probably what I need, not in a real legitimate way, but like from an autistic point of view. I guarantee you, they had no real relationships with their dad. Now, you're a woman, so this is 4 times harder for you. You basically had to do everything in that generation, and you pretty much still do, but. That's where I'm thinking to myself, it's one of those things. No wonder, let's say my grandfather was autistic just like me, but it got to me before there was diagnosis. No wonder. Like he literally could have gone to work, lived his own life, been a complete recluse. No one would have ever known, because that's what you do. You go to work, you go to the pub, you come home, you have some dinner, you watch some TV. No one gets to choose. You sit down on the couch, watch some TV, you go to bed. That's their life. No wonder they weren't diagnosed. No one was pushing their capacities and thresholds. You skip 2 generations ahead now, and here I am, and it's got to the point now where people even argue that if dads and mums even exist. Like, what is a dad? What is a mum? What is a man? What is a woman? People even argue that. So it's like, so I basically have to do everything, and you have to do everything. There's no winning here. So yeah, I know that's a really weird tangent, But for me, that's why I find it hard to reconcile protecting myself from autistic burnout and this kind of what it gets to, and being good at what I've signed up for.
I don't think there's any way to protect yourself from burnout, though. I think there's possibly the ability to recover faster, but you can take the autistic person out of the situation, but you can't take the autism out of the person, which is that old saying, wherever you go, there you are, right? So I could work in an office. I could, I worked office jobs and owned my own business for about 12 years after I got out of an office job, because I was accommodating myself before I even realized I was accommodating myself, because, I just couldn't survive in the office world. And what I found after I sold my business a few years ago was that I had less stress, but I'm not going to say that my world just jumped to like happiness galore, because no matter what we're doing or where we are, we're still going to struggle with smaller things, I say that, smaller things, like things that come more naturally to others. We're going to be exerting more energy, feeling more, exerting more effort, blah, blah, blah. No matter where we are, no matter what generation we were in, probably even. I think situations could change, but our brain wiring isn't going to. And at the end of the day, we're all doing the best we can. And I think that that's something worth acknowledging, really.
I mean, I agree with what you're saying.
We need to give us more credit.
I totally agree with what you're saying, and the thoughts and the premise. But you acknowledge, though, that you can actually limit the frequency and duration of burnout, or even like I'm saying, you can actually limit going into burnout by limiting periods of dysregulation leading to initial things like meltdowns and shutdowns. Like you acknowledge the premise I'm saying, which is if you are pushing yourself in a world where you are dysregulating yourself further constantly, you're going to melt down and shut down and have little outbursts, and then that's going to it's all about cumulative effect. That's going to accumulate and lead to burnout. And therefore, I might have experienced autistic burnout once every other year 10 years ago, when now you say yourself, it could be every 3 months or twice a year. But again, you don't just get to autistic burnout. It has to be based on, so what I'm saying is more and more periods of my choice, willingly, knowingly putting my regulation needs last, and therefore triggering myself more, and therefore it accumulating to burnout. So that's the only reason why I brought that up, because there is more of a need for us, I think, in this generation, certainly in a couple of generations prior, to put ourselves in more situations where we know it's going to dysregulate us and we know it's going to trigger us, but we see.
I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree. You can limit it, you can reduce them, and you can even reduce the length, and maybe it's just a few days as opposed to weeks or a month. Absolutely.
I had length reduction surgery recently, actually. Yeah.
You what?
I had length reduction surgery recently. Didn't work. Keep going. It didn't work. I still had burnout.
Yeah, right. No, but I mean, seriously, you just,
I think
don't be
so horrible.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Oh, no, you're so funny. No, I'm just saying that, like, yeah, obviously I think the unrealistic expectation for anybody thinking that you could eliminate that ever happening again is, unrealistic.
Not realistic. Totally agree.
Not realistic. But absolutely we can do things to keep them at lessen them. Absolutely. But, on the other side of that coin, I think expecting a life without hardships or discomfort actually is going to make you much more unhappy. And so kind of just recognizing that that's part of life, and we're so in our own heads, especially as an autistic person. I'm always, very much inside my own head. I think realizing that other people are experiencing similar things, because that's just part of being a human, is helpful too.
Have you met your son? Tell me more about this. Humans have to suffer. You'll have to tell me more about this. Autistic kids have to suffer. And I mean, hello, it's our standard daily practice, Jen. Autistic people go through daily sufferings just living. So at no point is there a premise where, there would be an ideal world where we wouldn't go through suffering. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, it's just anyway. I totally get what you're saying. It's just they're the kind of things that I find the most fascinating. Like there was a stat recently where they were saying, 1 in 2 Australian kids will be bullied in school at least once in their lifetime. Now I thought, this is a stat they put money into. Here's a stat. Every 10 out of 10 autistic kids will be bullied every day at school. Not once in their lifetime, probably every day, at least once a week, every week for their life. So but that's a stat that they put money into, that some normal neurotypical kid might get bullied once in their whole school life. How about autistic kids getting bullied daily or weekly forever? So we're starting on a plane or a benchmark of daily suffering at a much higher level than neurotypical people, and that's the thing I don't think people understand. Like the level of suffering or regulation is a whole. We're starting so close to the red that it's almost impossible to stay out of it, which is obviously what you talked about. It's unrealistic, but still that's the hardest part. I mean, it's one thing to teach my kid to go to school and to try and do things to keep him regulated, or, here's the things when you're feeling, dysregulated, you go outside for a walk, do this, do that. You can teach them that, but you can't teach them, how to program another child's mind to not bully you today and to trigger you and to set you off into some sort of, what they would call Hulk-like outburst. You know what I mean? And that's no different for adults, right? Like you can do all the work in the world, and then you might have to go to the shops for one thing, or you might have to call someone for one thing, or someone might call you for one thing, or one thing, that you've got no control over. And everything you've done is completely irrelevant now, right? And you're like ground zero.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. It's definitely, we're starting at a disadvantage. And I'm not saying that we do exist in suffering in some regard. But, whatever I can tell myself and remind myself that it's okay to be here right now, whatever allows me to give myself more grace and compassion and understanding during those times, and remembering that this too shall pass is a good thing.
Yeah. And probably one of the reasons why we can be good friends, because clearly you have a very different perspective to me, and that's required a lot of times. I mean, clearly, right? There's no way we're going to come across it on this chat as the same perspective of things. It's you're much more you're much more positive, that's for sure. The burnout stuff leading to the seasonal depression stuff. Do you think every year it's possible that it's the same stuff that's triggering you, or do you think every year it's accumulating and you just get it just gets worse? Because for me, I feel like it's half been to rationalize, but I feel like one of the cool things my brain worked out, it took ages, years, what worked out was, I feel like we live on a premise where when you get to the end of the year, everything stops and winds down for a day, it winds down for this one day thing, right? And then you have this break, and then it's New Year's Eve and New Year's Day, and then it kind of starts to slowly wind up again. But the premise is you get to Christmas and cut. And then you get to early January and it's and action, and you're just asked to record the same scene again. So you do school again, you do Easter again, right? You do everything again. You do birthdays again. It's like, oh, back to more birthdays, more presents. So I honestly feel like we live in a premise where at Christmas time the director goes, and cut. And there's actually no one directing you for that week of Christmas, between Christmas and New Year. It's almost like no one's got a script and no one knows what to do. That proves my point, this kind of simulation thing. People just walk around like, oh, I'm just sitting around doing nothing for a while. It's like, oh, what do you know, like going back to work next week. What are you doing in the meantime? Nothing. I don't know what to do. No one's told me what to do. But honestly, like January starts with basically, the great director coming down from the clouds and saying, and action. And it's everything the same. Same birthdays, same holidays, same everything. Like even the same things with kids at school. Like it's the same thing. You're doing the same life. Now, if nothing is going to depress you in life, that will. Because that makes no sense to me. We are literally going through the exact same year every year until we die. Mm-hmm. Everything's the same. Holidays, birthdays, everything. No wonder it gets to December and everyone stops. Like they literally have put the script down and don't know what to do because they haven't got a script. And I'm looking around at people going, let's just keep living. Do we have to sit on the couch for a week? Let's just keep going. You're stopping? What for? Christmas is over. I know, but I don't go back to work till January. Go back to work now. What's the difference? It's like, it just blows my mind. That's the best my brain has come up with, that kind of idea. And I think that's what makes me the most depressed in December. Why are we stopping? What's the stop? What's happening here? Do you know what I mean? It's like you guys in America, I think if you get a job, you might potentially get 1 week paid vacation or 2 weeks a year, right? Well, in Australia, it's a minimum of 4 weeks paid vacation, but it's irrelevant. Okay, but how many do kids get off? Kids get off like 7 months. It's like, we're training kids to have we're training kids to have 3 months off a year and then putting them in to get a job to have 1 week off a year. Anyway, the whole thing doesn't make any sense. I'm sorry, I've ranted, but that's what it's all about.
That's what this is. It's two autistic people ranting. It's unwatchable. Yeah, I don't have an answer to that question. That's a really interesting question. It's like, which came first, the chicken or the egg? But in talking about, the birthdays and the anniversaries and, the school holidays with the kids, it's almost like that, meme where people talk about like, oh, I can't do anything today because I've got a doctor's appointment or I have to make a phone call at 3:00. And it almost just feels like that is the year is the day, and every little interruption in there is like, well, I can't do anything this week. I've got an anniversary, or like I can't do anything, for the month of February because there's, a week off of school and a holiday in there, and it's, it's like the bigger version of that.
Oh, 1,000%. But don't you think also too, it just occurred to me, neurotypicals love that week between Christmas and New Year, let's say. They love that week because the world tells them stop, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they love that.
And we hate that.
There you go.
I hate it.
For me, the idea that the world is telling me, sorry, Orion, it's December. You can go back to your life in February, but between December and January, we're going to have everyone off and school off and work off. And so stop. And that's exactly right. There's nothing that makes me feel more uncomfortable, more dysregulated, more depressed than being told by the world to stop. And that's in many ways. Number one, they say, well, you've got to stop. Like, don't make you feel guilty. What, you're recording a video at Christmas? What's wrong with you? Christmas is about the family. What do you mean Christmas is about the family? They're asleep. They're drunk and asleep. But it is, that's exactly what I was thinking. That's the fascinating kind of, the dichotomy, the idea. People love the idea they're being given permission to stop. But for autistic people, for me, there's nothing worse. If I could have my way, I would live the same life every day constantly. As in, I don't want to, like holidays are cool, but I don't want to stop. I just want to keep going through my routines and my structure. And to be forced to stop is really hard. And again, this is not about kids and being on holidays, but they really throw you too. Because like there's a lot of holidays. Like in Australia, we have a calendar year that starts, like Feb to December. So, you do a 1 year in a calendar year, and there's 4 terms. So there's the end of term 1 holidays, end of term 2 holidays, end of term 3, and then there's end of term 4 is Christmas. Like, it never ends. It's basically holidays every 8 weeks. So it's a constant stopping. And for me as an autistic person, and like you mentioned yourself, that there's not many things that are worse than someone telling you, there's 2 things. Someone telling you to stop and someone telling you to start. Don't you hate when my partner sometimes is like, hey, why don't you go record a video? He's like, why don't you go, do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's routine, right? I will say, like, I do feel for you Australians there, or at least you autistic Australians that have kids, because I can at least kind of get into some routine with, we've got the scheduled breaks with the kids, but we at least have like a summer break where it's like 3 months and we're not having to deal with 2 weeks here, 3 weeks there, every 8 weeks or whatever it is that you like. So like you said, having to start and then stop and then start and then stop. My heart goes out to you, man.
Yeah. I can see the sun's going down in Colorado.
Sun's getting real low, Banner.
It's bright, man. I mean, it's like it's lighting up your arm. It's lighting up half your body. Seriously.
Yep,
all right,
the sun's telling us it's time to quit ranting, I guess.
So is there anything I didn't let you say that you wanted to share? Like, is there any experiences or anything? I don't know there is, but if not, we'll stop. But I just want to make sure you got a chance to share what you wanted to share. Is there anything else that was important that you really wanted to share?
No, that was seriously it. And I appreciate you letting me come onto your platform and rant for a little bit. That felt good.